Hey guys, my name is Jonathan. If you're new to the channel, I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Waterloo. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about my experience at the Big 4 accounting firms. Before I joined the PhD program, I had the chance to work for EY for a couple of years. I was a co-op student, intermediate staff, and then a senior for about a month. I know for a lot of accounting students, getting to the Big 4 is a big dream of theirs. Hopefully this video will give you guys some insights into the benefits and also the drawbacks of working at the Big 4. So the first factor I want to talk about is reputation. And I'm sure if you're a business student, you've heard of PwC, EY, KPMG, and Deloitte. Now these 4 accounting firms carry a lot of brand recognition, not only within accounting, but within the business world in general. So for young accounting students, getting their foot in the door and getting the opportunity to slap that name on their resume is a huge deal because it demonstrates to the world that you possess a certain set of skills and knowledge that makes you a competent accountant. It's definitely not easy getting hired to work at the Big 4, so it definitely makes you feel good knowing that you were selected. The second thing I want to talk about is the working environment. Now offices definitely vary around the world, so I'll just speak about my experience in downtown Toronto. So I worked at the Ernst & Young downtown Toronto office, and this was right in the middle of the city in the financial district. And as someone who's grown up in the suburbs of Toronto, this was a dream come true. At the time, EY has just moved their office into a brand new skyscraper. Everything was just so surreal. Everything was super new. The building was new. We were located around on the top levels of the building, so we had an amazing view of the city. The offices were really new. Everyone got 2 monitors. The caf was new. Everything was new. And I think just having that modern, office aesthetic environment, having that modern working environment definitely plays a role in how you feel about working for a company. And I can definitely see that the Big 4 firms definitely have that same modern working environment. Now the second thing we're going to talk about is salary and benefits. And it might be surprising to you that the Big 4 actually don't pay that much when you're just starting out at the firm. I believe that when I was starting out, my salary was around the high 40s. Obviously that might have changed since it's been a few years since I've worked there, but I would say that it's definitely not on the higher end of the spectrum. However, even though your starting salary might not be great, the firm does cover a lot of your expenses that I think you should also consider. For example, if you're pursuing your CPA designation, they will pay for your CPA license fees, your module classes, and even for the final CFE exam. And if you guys are doing your CPA right now, you know that those fees are not cheap. CPA is really expensive, and it's great that the firm covers all that cost for you. In addition, the firms also have some really good perks. For example, they have a fitness benefit. So a lot of firms offer a monetary amount that you can spend on anything that's fitness related. I believe for me, it was around $400 or $300 for a year. So I pretty much used that fitness benefit and bought myself a gym membership for the year, and that's completely free. One thing I'll say is that even though your salary is pretty low, you will notice that your salary does increase pretty substantially year to year. In industry, it's typically common for someone's salary to only go up by inflation, but at the firm, because your starting salary is so low and because they have such a rigid hierarchy of positions, you can expect a pretty modest increase in your base salary after every year that you work at the firm. So what this means is that there's a spectrum for a first year hire, for an intermediate, for a first year senior, for a second year senior, and then for a first year manager, and so on. So you're always going to be seeing your salary go up and up and up and up. The third thing we're going to talk about is the hours. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know that this is definitely one of the most punishing things. Now, if you're an auditor like me, then one thing that you'll likely be hearing about is busy season. And what busy season essentially is you working super long hours for a specific client because you need to audit through their financial statements and get them ready for the filing date. I would say typically busy seasons are about 3 months. And during those 3 months, you're likely working from 9 a.m. to probably 9 p.m. And there were many days where I had to work even later than that, all the way till midnight. And that's Monday to Thursday. Friday, they usually let you off by 5 p.m. And then you typically have to come in one day of the weekend and work some more. Sometimes you have to work both days on the weekend. It really does depend on your client. But you can just imagine the number of hours that you need to invest every week during busy season. And in some cases, you might not just have one busy season, you might have 2. In my case, I was part of 2 busy seasons. So one of my clients was a Canadian bank, and their busy season was from September to December. And then I had my other client, which is my regular client, and their busy season was from January to March. So you can imagine that's about 6 months out of the year where you're grinding long hours, and to be honest, it kind of sucks. And the fact that your starting salary isn't that high, I think that kind of plays a mental toll on you, where you kind of realize that if you were to calculate your salary on an hour by hour basis, it's not looking that great. And unfortunately, because you're working such long hours, that does heavily impact your work-life balance, and that typically is one of the reasons that a lot of people decide to leave the Big 4 firm. One thing I will say is that even though you're working these long hours, the firm does give you money to buy food. So I believe at the firm, it was like if you worked more than 10 hours or 11 hours a day, then they gave you around $22 or $25 to spend on food. So you can use that money for your coffees, your lunch, and your dinner. A good side benefit of that is that now you have this money and you can kind of try out restaurants that you never got to try before. So when I was at UI, I definitely tried out a lot of restaurants in Toronto that I wouldn't have tried out using my own money. Now this kind of relates to my fourth point about stress and work-life balance. Yes, it is definitely stressful at times working for the Big 4, and that's because you are working such long hours and you often have a lot of responsibilities, and you always feel that you're constantly being swamped with things that you got to do, and then you have requests from your managers above you, but then you also have requests from your staff below you. Sometimes it can definitely feel like you're being quite challenged a lot, and personally I definitely felt a deterioration in my mental health, especially when I started working full-time experience, just because I felt like it just wasn't for me. 6 months of busy season, you wake up, you grind, you go to sleep, you wake up, you grind some more, and it's a cycle that just feels like it's never going to end. And it's not like in the summers when things are typically lighter that, you know, your hours are just, you know, super low. You're still working your typical 9 to 5. So it's very taxing on you mentally. It's definitely taxing on you physically. So definitely having a good, I guess, morning and evening routine to help you kind of de-stress from work is very important. It's always important to go to work with a positive attitude, but it's definitely hard to maintain that positive attitude once you're in busy season. But what I will say is that if you're team members and you are able to continue to be lighthearted and not get on each other's nerves, I think busy season is definitely doable. Now the next thing I'm going to talk about is the learning experience. Now I would say the biggest benefit of working for the Big 4 is that you're really in a fast-paced, accelerated learning environment, and I think that's really beneficial to people who are just starting out their careers. What's great about audit is that you get the opportunity to work on different types of clients. And within each client, you might have a different set of responsibilities, obviously based on your experience. But what's nice is that you can be working on a client for maybe a couple months. When that gets wrapped up, then you get put on another client. You have another set of responsibilities. Let's say that goes on for 3 months, that gets wrapped up, and then you get to work on another client. So you kind of get to jump from clients to clients. You get to see how different companies work, you get to look at different industries, and then you get to do different sections of the engagement file. So it does give you a broad view of what audit is all about. And I think it's a great opportunity for people to kind of see what they like, what they don't like, and then that will help determine whether they want to specialize in a certain industry. As for me, I worked on a wide variety of clients. My first co-op, I worked for a mortgage lender. My second co-op, I worked for a asset management firm. And then when I came back full time, I had a chance to work on a Canadian bank. So, you know, 3 different types of areas. And within each area, I was doing different parts of the financial statement. So when you're starting out, you're typically doing something that's a bit more low risk, like cash, accounts receivable, things like that. But obviously, as your experience builds, then the manager will kind of assign you more riskier and tougher parts of the file. So there's always something to learn, there's always something new to do, and I think that it's a lot better than industry, because when you're in industry, the way to look at it is that you're essentially a cog in a giant machine, and when you're in industry, you have a set of responsibilities that you typically need to carry out within the day, and you kind of repeat those tasks on a daily basis, and things just kind of get mundane because you're kind of constantly doing the same thing over and over again, and there's only really a change once you switch positions or if you get promoted. Whereas the co-op kid at the public accounting firm, you know, probably got to jump from client to client, do different parts of the file, see more things. So it definitely opens your eyes a lot more than other opportunities would. One thing I will say is that when you're starting out, the tasks that you're going to be assigned to do can be really mundane and boring and repetitive, and you might feel that it's a waste of your time, but please just have a positive attitude when you're being assigned to do these things. You know, these are the tasks that nobody really likes to do, but there's things that have to get done, and since you're at the bottom of the corporate ladder right now, then that kind of work typically get assigned to you. So some of the tasks that you might be asked to do are inventory counts, which are typically not that fun. Some sort of file management, so like really just going to the file, making sure you have all the Word documents uploaded in the right places, things like that. Tie-outs, which is really just making sure that one number on this Excel workbook matches the number on that Excel workbook. There's gonna be a ton of that. There's also a lot of PDFing, printing, and preparing physical confirmations and mailing them out. So a lot of like administrative tasks, I guess you can say. But I think that for any new co-op student, that's just kind of your rite of passage, that you just gotta get those things done, you learn from them, and then when you become a intermediate or senior, then you'll be the one assigning those tasks to the new co-op kids. So one thing I forgot to mention, rolling forward documents. You're definitely going to be doing that as a new employee. And when it comes to rolling forward documents, you're really just changing the date on last year's document to this year, and then you're deleting the old information on the file and just creating an empty shell for this year. You're going to be doing a ton of that. Now, number 6, we're going to be talking about SFI preparation. Yes, SFI, the big scary accounting exam that all CPA candidates need to get through. So one of the good things about the firm is that the firm gives you the resources and the time to help you succeed. So number 1, they pay for the exam, which is awesome. Number 2, they give you typically, I think, 1 month or 2 months in the summer to study for the SFI. So that's about 4 to 8 weeks of time that you can purely focus on this exam. And that's great because a lot of companies in industry, they might only give you 2 weeks. And of those weeks, you got to use your vacation days. So the Big 4 definitely gives you the time to prepare for those exams. In my experience, we also had some extra workshops that they hired for us on the weekends. So that was definitely super helpful. And the fact that you're in an accounting firm where everyone above you has gone through the SFI, there's just a wealth of knowledge and experience you can gather just by talking to your teammates on, hey, how was your experience with the SFI? What did you find that worked? What did you find that didn't work? And I felt that they always gave you great tips. One more thing I like to say is that the Big 4 firms do pay for your CPA modules before the SFI. If you're one of the students who decided to do a master's degree, which kind of, I guess, substitutes those CPA modules, when you come back full time, they'll actually reimburse part of your tuition, just so it's the same between someone who's done a master's degree or diploma versus someone who did the modules through CPA. So as you guys know, I did my master's degree at U of T. So when I joined full-time at UI, they reimbursed part of my tuition. I think it was like $7K or $10K, somewhere around there. So that's definitely a huge chunk of change that the firms give back to you, which is amazing. Okay, next we're going to be talking about continuity. Now, if you worked at the Big 4, continuity is a big word that gets thrown around a lot. And honestly, it can be the deciding factor on whether your engagement goes well or it doesn't go well. So what continuity is whether or not there are people within your engagement team that has expertise over the file. And people typically develop expertise over a particular file if they worked on that file in previous years. So if you have a team with members who've worked on the file before, then you have a lot of continuity because these guys have looked at the file before, they have a lot of knowledge on what to do, and you can expect your engagement to go super smooth. However, there are many cases, because the firms are short-staffed a lot of the time, where you just don't have that continuity. And in order to get the file done, you heavily rely on what was done in prior year's files. So you look into prior year's files, you try to investigate what they've done, if it makes sense, and then you essentially take what they did last year and you try to replicate it for this year. And unfortunately, if your team doesn't have a lot of continuity, it can be pretty stressful because obviously there's a lot of moving factors that goes on in an audit, and without anybody there who done it last year, it can be really hard to kind of figure out the little issues that they went through last year that now you might have to go through again for this year. And in many cases, because the firm is short-staffed, you might be asked to do an acting intermediate or acting senior or acting manager role. Now what this means is that you are going to be acting the position above your current position without any additional compensation. So one example I can give you guys is when I was an intermediate, I was asked to be the acting senior on my engagement. So what this means is that even though I am an intermediate, the responsibilities that I had were more of a senior. And yes, it is a learning opportunity because you get a taste of what it's like to be in the position that's above you. But unfortunately, it's also a lot of stress because you might feel that you don't have the necessary skills to be a senior. And for me, I definitely thought it was a little intimidating because as a senior, you gotta lead meetings, you gotta like reach out to clients, you're kind of like the key contact on the engagement. Whereas if you're an intermediate, you're more laid back and you still have that year to kind of develop your skills and things like that. And you have a senior on top of you who's kind of dealing with all the issues on the engagement. So that is definitely another source of stress, and that's typically because there's no continuity on the team. So that's definitely something that you guys should be looking out for. Okay, number 8, we're going to be talking about career progression. Now, this is something that I do like about the firms. It's very transparent on what your career will look like at a Big 4 firm, just because they have such a rigid hierarchy structure. So to give you guys an example, it was typically you had your first year new hire / co-op, then you had your second year intermediate, then you had first year senior, second year senior, then first year manager, second year manager, third year manager, fourth year manager, and then you have senior managers, and then above that you have your different levels of partners. So your promotion at the firm really depends on the number of years that you spend. Based on my observation, if you do a good job, and you don't have to be like a stellar candidate within your pool, if you do like an average good job, you should be expecting to get promoted to the next position. The people who didn't get promoted were really bad, and those are the people who are outliers of that year. So I don't think a lot of people were really worried about getting promoted. As long as you tried your best, you did your job, then promotions work out really well. Now, why is that good? Because in my experience working in industry is that you typically only get promoted if the person above you either moves to a new position or that person decides to retire. Whereas at the firm, because you have so many people that are constantly leaving, there's always a need for human resources. Now, number 9, working with clients. Now, this can definitely make or break your experience at the firm. One of the tough things about working in audit is that it's a client-facing profession. So regardless if your clients love you or they hate you, you always have to show professionalism and essentially cater your audit services to the client. Now that can be really tough because many times clients don't give you support. Sometimes clients send you the wrong thing. Sometimes clients get really fed up with your requests for support. So it's definitely a delicate balance that I think will naturally come to you as you are working on your audits. I know that for me, typically in your co-op or first year, you aren't really dealing with the clients a lot. Your seniors will be the one who's kind of doing all the client relationship stuff, and you're just being CC'd on these emails. But obviously, as you climb up the corporate ladder, you are expected to be the point of contact for the team. You're expected to lead meetings. You're expected to make sure that the client is happy and things like that. So I think it's great. You get to work on your communication skills, you get to work on being professional, and that's typically not an experience that other people might have at a regular 9-to-5 job just because they're always working internally and within their teams. So it's definitely a different dynamic. I would say based on my experiences, my client interactions were usually fine, but honestly it really just comes down to I need the stuff to get the work done so you can issue your financial statements. So it's always a delicate balance, but I think it'll be fun for you guys to figure that out on your own. Now the last thing I want to talk about, and this is definitely a plus for me, is that it's a young working environment at the Big 4. So the Big 4, you're going to be having a lot of co-op students who are, you know, in their doing their undergraduate degrees. You're going to have recent grads, and typically a lot of people at the firm are between the ages of 20 and 30. And when you have that kind of age group predominant within a working environment, it does feel pretty casual. Like it kind of just felt like an extension of university. You're with people your own age, you can relate easier. And personally, I felt that because they were my age, it was definitely a lot easier to be more casual with them. Whereas within industry, you typically find that you'll be working with people who are a lot older than you, and those people might have families, might have kids, different priorities. So it might just be a different working dynamic compared to working with a bunch of 20 to 30-year-olds. So that's all I have for this video. Hopefully I gave you guys a good depiction of what it's like working for the Big 4. For me, I definitely am very fortunate and grateful that I had the opportunity to work for EY. I thought it was an amazing experience. It definitely kicked off my career in the right direction, and I definitely gained a lot of skills and knowledge at the firm that I truly believe I wouldn't have gotten working for any other company. The reason I eventually decided to leave Big 4 was that I felt that working at a firm was not the right fit for me, and obviously, as you guys can see, I'm doing my PhD program right now, so ultimately I wanted to pivot my career into academia and being a professor. If you guys have the opportunity to apply for a Big 4 position, I would say definitely go ahead. Definitely doesn't hurt to try it out, and hopefully it is a great fit for you guys. If you guys like this type of content, then definitely consider subscribing to the channel. Hit that thumbs up button if you enjoy the video, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of my future YouTube videos. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you in the next video.